Tragedy striking in Minneapolis. Following this very closely, friends. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right show. Here is what we know as of right now. Obviously, this is a fluid situation, and as we're together for 2 hours, I'll update this with any new information that comes in. Producer Robbie is surveying the news feed and is updating me in real time. So about 8:15 in the morning, local time, at the Annunciation Catholic Church and School in South Minneapolis, a gunman from the outside began spraying the students and teachers that were there gathered for a mass. Now, I have my son has, it's just one of those things that he's was in a Catholic school, now another religious school. I'm very familiar with these mass gatherings. You have everybody in the school in one place. So apparently the shooter was aware of this. The victims, so far 2 children aged 8 and 10, were killed. 17 others are injured, including 14 children. 2 of those are in critical condition. The response time, this is another component of the story that we are following. The response, apparently, of police a little delayed in getting to the campus. There had been a nighttime, I guess a night of criminal activity running amok. Imagine that in Minneapolis. So police resources were described as strained. Nonetheless, the shooter was contained by 9:30 a.m. Imagine the harrowing timeline here. 8:15 a.m., shots fired, declared contained an hour and 15 minutes later. So what do we know about the shooter? Obviously, you know this from following my program. We do not name mass shooters. I don't do it. I don't play any portion of their manifesto, which incidentally leaked out online moments before YouTube took it down. People went in and downloaded it. So we have that. We have information. Not going to play it. Not going to share it. These people do not deserve a platform whatsoever. So that's just my preference. But I do want to get into this because the identity of the shooter obviously matters. Now, it's not his name that matters. He was 22 years old. He died of a self-inflicted gun wound. He shot himself, being the coward that he is. His mom had apparently worked at the school until 2021. This guy was a Trump hater. He wrote "Kill Donald Trump" on his rifle magazine. He wrote "Kill Trump Now" on some of his optics on his rifle. He wrote some nasty stuff about Israel, including "Israel must fall," "Burn Israel," was etched on the rail of his AR rifle. And then a little cherry on top here, 6 million wasn't enough, referring to the number of Jews who perished in the Holocaust. So, shooter was trans. Born male, changed his name at 17 with parental consent and approval, and obviously was nuts. Now, I have this question here because, of course, the left is immediately running in with the gun control arguments. And by the way, not just the left. I was, and I'll play this we progress here through the hour. I mean, even some so-called conservative stalwarts now coming forward with this ridiculous position. So I'm a solutions-oriented person. When I talk about this program being common sense conservatism, I stand by that. And as a solutions-oriented person, I look at any issue and I go, is it preventable? And how is it preventable? How do we stop this from happening? Because you can't just throw your hands up and say, well, there's nothing we can do. I mean, bad things happen. Now, that is true. On one hand, bad things will happen in spite of all of our best efforts. But the legitimate question has to be asked, why? Why are mass school shootings a relatively modern phenomenon? And why have we had a rash of prominent school shootings, mass shootings, done by trans individuals? You can't ignore that. The left just wants to say it's guns. It's guns. All we do is get away from the guns. It is such a ridiculous argument because I don't know how you contain it. And I always put this out there at the start of any Second Amendment debate. I don't dispute that you can't shoot someone if you don't have a gun or if you don't have bullets. I don't dispute that. But if we erase, as the Democrats fantasize over this, if we erase the Second Amendment, it's gone tomorrow. And the government goes and confiscates every single gun to kill 2 or 3 or 10 students. First of all, the guns remain in circulation, right? They're not going to go away. If somebody is intent on mass murder, they'll find a way to get to that weapon. Number one. Number two, they'll use a knife. They'll use a blade. They'll use a bomb. It's relatively easy. People would be surprised how easy it is to create an improvised explosive device. So this, they'll find another way. So when we talk about solutions, you go to root causes. And the root cause is always the individual. And why is this going up? And I've been talking about this for years, since I'm getting blue in the face over this. We have an alarming uptick we've had over the course of my lifetime of medicated youths in America. This is the issue. This is the core fundamental problem. Antidepressant use, SSRIs, these are the serotonin inhibitors. These are the things that it's all the common drugs out there that have been in the marketplace, used by, and I'll put because I remember this as it started becoming popular in the 90s. Divorced parents, kids are squirrely, parents don't have time for their kids. Kids are being told to not go out and play. It's dangerous out there. Kids get, obviously cooped up and depressed, plus mom and dad are fighting problems at home. Medicate the kid. Do you know that, and this is just a wild statistic, that over the last 3 decades, use of these antidepressants has gone up something like a factor of by 12 to 14 times. Right? This is just, it's an exponential curve up. So you find this online. It's not a mystery. But nobody wants to talk about this because guess what? Every single goober on television today going, it's the guns, doesn't want to take responsibility for the fact that in their own home, with their own kids, many of these people have decided to medicate children instead of to give attention to their kids. Being a parent is a big responsibility. My wife and I have 3 kids. It's not easy. There is so much that a child needs. And I up against the clock here. There's so much to cover. But folks, my point is, and then when we get to the trans issue, listen up. I'm taking my gloves off. It is not surprising to me that a child, young adult, that has one mental disorder has other mental disorders. And until we start treating trans kids as kids that need help, psychological help, that need parents, that need adults to look at them and say, no, you're not female. No, you're not male. You're born a male. You're born a woman. And go outside and play. But the adults have failed the kids. And they've done it here now over the past 3 to 4 decades. And it's upsetting. And in typical liberal fashion, there's always a finger being pointed somewhere else. It's the guns, it's the whatever. This was preventable. That's the real tragedy here. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT, the What's Right Show, brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Sam Mirejovsky here. The What's Right Show is on following the tragic events in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I just pointing out here a little statistic about the trends of antidepressant use. First increased in the early 1990s, and it was followed very closely by a spike in school shootings. Now, liberals will tell you there's no causal link because, of course, yes, every data person understands that correlation does not prove causation. Just because data correlates doesn't mean that it is proof of a cause or of a connection there. Sometimes, and this is, again, it comes back to common sense. Sometimes we just have to think about things from a perspective of our own life experience. My life experience, I remember I'm a 1980s kid. And I had friends who had old school parents, and then I had friends who had sort of new school parents. I grew up in a relatively affluent area in Orange County, California. And in the 80s, you started to come with the idea of lax parenting, of building up kids' self-esteem. And it was at the same time that obviously a lot of families were breaking up. Divorce rates went up. Kids, I had friends who were, divorced parents or parents getting a divorce. These kids were ignored. Mom and dad were out fighting each other or doing whatever they were doing and going out and dating. I grew up with parents whose, aside from them both working jobs, they come home and we were their life. I'm looking at this shooter in Minneapolis. I'm wondering where the hell, I presume he's living at home. How do I presume this? Well, let me tell you. I'm looking at all of his, rifles and ammunition, and I know a little bit about guns. That stuff is not inexpensive. I'm looking at the video that he posted online. It looks like he's in a house. One of the things he mentions in his manifesto is his jobs, that he loser jobs. He doesn't sound like he was gainfully employed. So I'm thinking here, where the hell were these parents? I understand that the kid was 22, so he's a young man, but he's still the son, right? He's still the son. This, dive into depression, this dive into, fascination with weapons didn't start yesterday. It didn't start last year. My guess looking at this is it's, could be $7,000 worth of firearms, accessories, and ammunition. Where did he get the money? And if his parents contributed to this and helped him with this, while being too caught up in their own worlds to know that they had somebody in their home that was spiraling like this. There's liability there, civil liability for sure. And I think if you want to start preventing school shootings, parents should be held criminally responsible for their acts of their minor children or their adult dependents that are living in their homes. If we put the parents on trial and gave them each a 15-year jail sentence, it would be, in my view, a cautionary tale for any future family that has a budding mass murderer living upstairs. There's so many stories like this. Well, we just thought it was an outlet. He liked guns. Okay. If your son is accumulating a small arsenal in your house, you got a problem. Now, again, there's some things we don't know, but this is certainly something that's come out in past shootings. So, look, to me, it's straightforward. We should stop medicating kids. My daughter, let me tell you, this is a story, Robbie. I'm going to get personal here. My daughter, my middle daughter, came back from the Czech Republic, came back from Prague, had kind of a, I'm not going to say a sedentary summer. We were busy doing things, but it was a chill summer. Okay. She didn't go out. She wasn't particularly active. And we watched her over the course of a few weeks following the return from Europe. We watched, my wife and I, her sort of deteriorate. She got moody. Now, it would be easy to say, well, you know what? She's a 14-year-old girl, moody, it's normal, hormones raging, all that stuff. What did we do? Well, because we're not new age parents, we didn't go, oh, well, let's have her medicate or maybe, no. We said, we made her try out for the cross country team. She ran cross country when she was here. Before she left for Prague, she did reasonably well. Said, you're back on it. She fought it tooth and nail. I would get up early to run with her to train over her protestations, just to make her get up and go and move. Now, some of you are, I'm sure, nodding along because you know exactly how the story ends. Within a week of running every day, 2 miles every day, Vera was a different person. Night and day difference. Maybe we should cut the video games. Maybe we should cut the screen time. Maybe kids should go out and play. But I know what happened in the 80s. There were a series of high-profile child abductions. A lot of parents go, oh, we can't let the kid play outside or go anywhere or whatever. The generation before grew up on their bikes, going miles away from home, and basically when the street light, lamps came on, that's when it was time for dinner. It was a different world. And so these kids that were sitting at home and were playing video games, which also came onto the scene, a lot more television, then started getting depressed. And parents, instead of engaging with their kids, go, oh, we'll just solve it chemically. And then the same pharmaceutical industry that has put us in other messes came along with a highly profitable model that fed chemicals to our young people and rewired their brains. You want to talk about solutions? This is a real solution. And if your kid is sad, it's the same thing as when you're sad, when I'm sad, when we're upset about things. If I come home and I'm in a mood because I've had a tough day at work, I can tell you right now, I go for a run. The minute the minute your blood starts to flow, your endorphins go up and you feel better. Is there clinical depression? Yes. But have we overreacted to this? Have we overdiagnosed people? Oh, he has ADHD. Oh, he has all this stuff. Instead of just practicing a little bit of tough love. Now, the trans thing is a component. I'm not forgetting it. I'm getting to it. These parents that go along, oh, your kid's trans. Mom, I think I'm a boy. Okay, we have to have a real conversation about this. All right, stay tuned. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email if you need to reach me. I will read it here on air if it's a good question. Be right back. Well, all of these videos of Waltz and other politicians in Minnesota are not aging well. I promise you that. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism. Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Okay, Sam at what'srightshow.com. Email me with questions, comments, and concerns. I am checking my email here as the show proceeds forward. Obviously, we are laboring here, folks, in a tough environment. This morning, this tragedy in Minneapolis, heavy on my heart. Many of you, like me, have kids or grandkids that go to school. I mentioned this at the top of the hour. My son is in a religious school. He was for 3 years at Bishop Gorman. Now he's at a school out in California. He frequently went to devotionals, to mass. So the imagery of these kids all being huddled together in one place in a house of worship, when bullets began spraying through the stained glass window at them, indiscriminately hitting them, striking them, killing them, hurting them, is it's too much for me to bear. Now, problem with the responsibility of doing this program is that I have to brush all this aside, the emotion of it, and get to the issues that are now before us. You cannot talk about this incident and not discuss the trans issue. Now, let me rephrase this. I believe that we absolutely do have a mental health crisis in America. We've spent much of the shows this week actually talking about it in different ways. The fragility that is out there right now, and not just with young people, but even, frankly, folks that ought to know better, people in their 60s. For example, posting videos where they are rage-filled simply because they've been confronted by someone with whom they disagree. Now, I'll just tell you, I mean, none of my children have come to me and said, "Dad, I think I'm not the gender that I was born into." But I had my youngest, and by the way, my a little aside here, my friends, my kids' friends, particularly my son's friends, and I'm going to shout out to all you guys. I know you are big fans of the program. They listen to the show. So, for example, I know Kai, you listen to the show. So you know, if you're hearing me talk about people you know very well. So I'm telling you, folks, everything I say here on the program is 100% true because I'm held accountable by a whole bunch of 17-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and 12-year-olds who know my kids, and their parents know me and Sherry. So just letting you know that it's passing the mustard. My daughter, my youngest, who is brilliant, she is so smart. She's a bundle of laughs. But you know, in kindergarten, my Ava came home one day, whatever it was, and said that she was a dog. She told us she was a dog, and she invented this entire alter ego as a dog, and came up with a name for herself, and that was it. She was that dog, and you never knew what you'd get. Sometimes, and she got really into it, so she would take a marker and make her nose black and give herself whiskers, and then put a little headband on with ears, and sometimes she would go to class like this, to school, and the teacher was just like, "Okay, we've got the dog here today, okay." And at no point, I know it's going to sound absurd, but this is very important. At no point did Sherry and I go, oh, well, let's consult with a physician. Perhaps there is a surgeon who can turn our daughter, our human child, into a dog. Like, we just didn't think that. Now, please tell me and email me. I'm begging you to explain to me what the difference is between what my daughter experienced and what these kids that come home and say, I'm not happy as a boy. Because I'll tell you something. These kids that are being turned into, or, well, given gender affirming care, but basically getting chemically castrated, they have depression issues. They have mental health problems. They're struggling with puberty. Middle school for me were the 2 worst years of my life. Hell on earth. And I can understand if you don't have support, if you don't have the right parents, I can understand that you might start to look for explanations as to why you don't fit in. And this is, by the way, why it is so dangerous that we allow teachers and other activists who are adults give our kids ideas and put ideas into their heads about, well, maybe the reason that you don't like who you are and you don't feel comfortable in your own skin, side note, what teenager does, ? Maybe this is because you're trans. And they give the kid an out. And by the way, the parents oftentimes take the out because it doesn't involve the parents having to take any responsibility for being crap parents. I know a guy here in town who has a trans kid, and he beats everybody over the head with it. Well, I have a trans kid. You can't talk about trans, whatever. Now, you know what? He's the guy who, left his wife in the middle of this child's teenage years, hooked up with a younger hot chick, kind of went through a midlife crisis. He'll never take responsibility for any of that. You'll never hear out of his lips, well, maybe I messed my kid up because I'm a selfish jerk. Been married for 20 years. Marriage is not easy. Plenty of times, I'm just being honest here, folks, plenty of times, certainly could leave and have more fun on my own. Certainly my poor wife could have left me a few times. And, Robbie's laughing. But you stick together because you've made commitments. You stick together because you made kids. So back to these adults that are, giving this advice to kids. Well, maybe you're confused because maybe you're trans. And all of a sudden the kid, yeah. They come home and, the parents don't want to be on the wrong side of what's popular. Plus now the counselor at the school tells mom and dad, you're not the problem here. It's not that you two are fighting and that dad has a 21-year-old girlfriend. That's not the problem. The problem is that there's this gender dysphoria, and it's this big, term, and it explains everything away. This is the problem. I see in this shooter, and it's actually kind of heartbreaking, I see in this shooter a deeply troubled young person who at some point somewhere didn't have real adults look him in the eyes and say, son, go out there and work out. Son, no, you can't stockpile weapons and be obsessed with death. Son, no, you're not trans. This is what we have to normalize. And this is hugely controversial. I'm going to get in trouble for this. I already know it. But guess what? I don't care. Because it has to be said. Transness in youths is not real. And it shouldn't be encouraged. It's a mental health problem and ought to be treated this way. My daughter thought she was Oscar the dog. We didn't send her off to a surgeon to affix a bushy tail. When your daughter comes home and says, I'm fat, but you can see that she's been starving herself, we call that anorexia. We treat it. At no point do we say, well, let's get you out for liposuction. Okay? That's actually a better analogy, because that's dysmorphia, body dysmorphia. We don't say anorexia is real. We go, honey, you need to actually give your body the nutrients it needs. And right now, where you're at is not good. So you treat that, but not by affirming it. And every adult, every politician that goes out there and talks about affirming transness is destroying our society. You want some truth? I'm here to deliver it. Well, let the fun begin, Robbie. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment. Back in March of 2025, in a House of Representatives speech, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, who, by the way, this is the guy who was passed over for re-election by the Somalian pirate. The Democratic Socialists said, no, we don't want you. You're not woke enough. The fact that you kneeled bawling before the coffin of George Floyd is not good enough for us. We're going to get this weird-looking dude. Anyway, so Frey here, this is March of 2025. Let me play this. It's relevant. It absolutely is relevant. Listen.
And I want all of you just to know exactly where we are as far as our neighbors go. Minneapolis will continue to be a safe haven for undocumented immigrants, for our trans community. Regardless of who you are or where you come from, Minneapolis is a place where you should be proud to call home.
Yeah, okay. So we're a safe haven for trans. It's really important. Okay. I'm laying the groundwork here. I want you to understand what this is all about. The politicians in Minnesota, from Tim Walz on down, are obsessed with trans. It's all they do. At a Tim Walz speech, March of 2023, Peggy Flanagan, who is wearing a t-shirt that says protect trans kids with a big killer knife on it. Okay? Protect, I guess, with a knife.
We just have to make the case to them that the alternative and what we provide, the quality of life, the enhancements, the ability to form a union or send your child to school safely. What we have to be clear about is don't take the bait. It boggles my damn mind that in the midst of a military takeover of our cities and the attempt to go into others, the flaunting of the rule of law, the cruelness, and the unconstitutional. So DNC, go lead the fight.
Shut up. It does not. Listening to your kid and trusting your child is not what being a good parent means. You're the adult. You're supposed to know better. Now, of course, listening to your children and hearing them out is important. I'm not saying it isn't. But when your kid comes with an insane idea, you don't go, well, that's just wonderful. Let's do that. Here on this program, we practice common sense. That isn't common sense. And I think actually to save our society from getting any more cooked than it already is, we're going to have to get back to old school parenting. I'm your father, not your friend. We are your parents. We're not your buddies. One of my favorite things I would tell my kids when they were younger is sometimes come back from school a little bit confused, and they'd start to get a little lippy with me. And I would, my response was, whoa, stop. I think you're talking to one of your friends on the playground. I'm your father. You can't talk to me like that. Big problem right now. American parents, and it's other countries too, but in particularly in the West, American parents have stopped demanding respect from their children. And they start listening to insane activists like this woman, who's a position of authority in the Minnesota government, saying, oh, you should listen to your kids and you should trust your kids. And it's your job as a grown-up to listen and to believe them. My child comes home and says, boy, Mom, Daddy, I was visited by a magical unicorn and he told me that blah, blah, blah. You'd say, okay, stop right there. Don't believe everything your kid tells you. Especially not my daughters, my youngest, an expert level liar. So you can't do this. We have abdicated our parental responsibilities. And then we wonder why our society is going to hell in a handbasket. Notice again, right? They want to talk about guns and guns only. Meanwhile, they have chased religion and prayer out of schools. And I'm not even particularly religious, but I'm just saying maybe the social cohesion that comes from kids gathering and praying is a good thing. Number one. Number two, the family unit is under attack. Homes need a mother, a father who are leading their home. So this is important. And finally, and this is really important as well, teachers need to stop being, some sort of activist advocates for crazy lunatic things like trans issues. Get back to teaching. And we, as the citizens of our state, our county, our city where we live in, need to empower teachers to have more control in the classroom. Students need to respect teachers, and teachers need to not indoctrinate the kids in whatever, latest fad wackadoodle agenda there might be. So this to me is what's so fundamental here. Now, I want to get to some of the media reactions here at the top of the hour, because isn't it interesting how even Fox News is dancing around the trans issue? They want to touch it. It's become this third rail. We're being held hostage by a group of lunatics, frankly, who will not let you say trans is a problem, else you be considered transphobic and unfit for polite society. We have to have these conversations. And by the way, Helen Joyce wrote a really, really good book that I urge everyone to read, called Trans. And she gets into the statistics of this. She gets into how all of a sudden there's a private school where 18%, 20%, 40% of the girls in a given class begin identifying as trans. Like, that's not statistically possible. That's social contagion. We have words for this. We understand what that is. That isn't gender dysphoria. That isn't transness. Now, as far as I said earlier, as far as kids being trans, I understand that there is body dysmorphia. I get that, and it should be treated. And I also understand that you have something called autogynephilia, that particularly men dress up in women's clothing and they get turned on by it, which is why you see all these exhibitionist trans activists parading around Disney World, and these men going into women's bathrooms. They're getting their jollies off of this. It's time that we call them what they are. They are sick perverts. Enough. Okay? We got to get back to some kind of common sense. We know what it is. And we cannot be let to be intimidated by a society who somehow has normalized this, because it's not working. And that's the problem. It's not working. So media reactions up next, along with some curious things being said by our political leaders. Well, you do not want to miss the next hour. I promise you that. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam at what'srightshow.com. At What's Right Sam on Twitter, formerly referred to as X. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. FBI Director Kash Patel now claiming the FBI is investigating the shooting, also has designated it as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings and welcome to the What's Right Show. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on Twitter. On X, you'll want to follow me. Trust me, if you like what you're hearing, you're going to love hearing from me online. Okay. Here's the thought. And I love, by the way, that the FBI is coming out with this. I love that Kash Patel is treating this as a hate crime. Obviously, if you look at the shooter's manifesto, and I've gone over it, I've looked at it, I'm not going to read from it, but I will give some characterizations of it that I think are accurate. He's a bit of a Satanist. He hates religion. He feels oppressed. He's got stupid politics, but so do a lot of people. He certainly is no fan of Donald J. Trump. In fact, his weapons had slogans written on them threatening to kill the president. Kill Donald Trump, I think, is written on one of the rifles. So a lot of that stuff going on. And look, the narrative has been for so many years. If you are listening to CBS News or CNN, or you're listening to Amy Klobuchar or Tim Walz, what's the narrative? The narrative is that trans people are threatened by conservatives. Trans people are at risk. Their personal safety is on the line. Played the clip just last segment of an official there in Minnesota talking about how trans people need to be protected. She's wearing a shirt with a knife and a slogan, "Protect Trans." So, the idea, the Biden administration, at least, the FBI, DOJ, had this, narrative going that it was actually MAGA going around hunting trans people and whatnot, when the exact opposite is true. Look at all the trans shooters from Aberdeen, Maryland in 2018 to STEM School Highlands Ranch in Colorado 2019. Colorado Springs, a nightclub attack there in 22. Nashville, Tennessee, Covenant School in 2023. Remember this incident. The FBI actually hid the manifesto and tried to downplay this as a hate crime against conservatives. Well, Christians, at least, certainly in the school. 6 were killed, 3 kids, 3 staff. Then there was the non-binary shooter in Philadelphia in July of 2023. That person, place, or thing killed 5 people. This is I don't know, since 2018, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 incidents. But by all means, yes, it's the trans people that are being threatened by conservatives. Got it. So it's a matter of correcting the narrative, right? I mean, I'm listening to, I know some of you listening to the podcast all across the country and across the world. I get the station feed here from the home station in my ear. So I get the pleasure of listening to CBS News, and it's oftentimes is talking about things that are currently in the news, which is, of course, what I'm doing here on the program myself. And the way they're presenting it, I'm sitting here and I'm I'm yelling in the microphone about it because it's so ridiculous. Some of the takes here are absolutely crazy. All right, let's take, for example, all right? This is good. Okay, so obviously the matter immediately became a conversation about gun control. So CNN this morning, as we still don't know exactly what's been cooking, what's been going on, we have Pamela Brown talking to Evan Perez about the rifle. If you're going to talk about gun control, understand, please, what a semi-automatic rifle is. One trigger pull, one round. That's semi-automatic. Fully automatic is, a machine gun. Squeeze the trigger and you get a volley of shots until you basically run out of ammunition. All right? So listen to this. This is just one of the places where the narrative today has been wackadoodle.
The gun was reloaded several times. It seemed like a rifle, he said, a semi-automatic rifle, and it went on for several minutes.
Right, and look, that's not uncommon as well. These things can shoot dozens of bullets, in just one trigger pull, right?
Okay, you don't know what you're talking about. Thank you for participating. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is a senator from Minnesota, talks about automatic rifles need to be banned in the wake of the shooting. Again, this guy had a semi-automatic rifle. And I have a very important point to make for this, and I'll tell you after I play the clip.
It, of course, makes me think about guns and all the work we've done to ban these automatic rifles and to do something when it comes to the background checks and everything, and we keep getting thwarted. We were able to pass a limited measure on a bipartisan basis, but not enough to stop something like this. And it just makes you think about that as well without knowing the details about how he got that gun, if the gun was legal, what kind of gun it was. But it was clearly one of these automatic rifles.
Okay. Again, it's not an automatic rifle. This was a semi-automatic rifle. Oh, by the way, the first semi-automatic rifle was made back in 1885. All right? And they went into mass production in the U.S. I think it was with the Garland, or no, the Winchester model, 1903. So anyway, in the 20th century, they started getting mass produced. Kind of interesting that all these semi-automatic rifles have been in production for 100 years plus, but these school shootings really only began in the last 25 years. Just food for thought, right? And this is why one of the great disappointments of the conservative movement, former Congressman Trey Gowdy, here on Fox News with host Trey Gowdy, with the host, excuse me. So Trey Gowdy's the guest there. Okay, so he's the host of the show, right? So okay, got it. Okay, here we go.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is, how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings does it take before we're going to have a conversation about keeping firearms out? It's always a young white male, almost always. I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female? Did any of y'all think that? I mean, there's been one school shooting involving a female.
It was in Tennessee.
One. Yeah, Tennessee. But other than that, it is usually young white males.
Okay. Fox News today. I know a lot of you like Fox News. I'm going to tell you, Fox News is slowly devolving into garbage. They had on their Chiron, which is the banner at the bottom of the screen. At the bottom of the screen, they had church shooter went by two names. And they can't even call the person trans. Now, I have to credit Cernovich for this because he's the one who pointed this out, that there's apparently at Fox News a high-level executive who he claims might even be in HR, who has a trans kid. And apparently everyone on air and all the producers are scared out of their minds to call this trans shooting or any trans shooting that what it is. Because this woman apparently makes the issue personal. And then everybody working with her is afraid to be on the wrong side of this. I mean, it's kind of what I'm getting at, right? You can't fix problems in society if topics are no-go zones. And I don't think you can fix a problem unless you're willing to consider all of the issues involved. It's such a mass oversimplification to go, it's the guns. Because, as I've pointed out before, after the Civil War in America, there were a lot of guns out there. Everybody came home from war with a gun. Ditto World War I, and particularly after World War II. Gun ownership in America soared. But because we had social cohesion, because we had adults in the classroom, adults in the home that were directing their kids to become strong, emotionally strong, and responsible, you didn't have school shootings. My wife grew up in Utah and remembers her brothers remember this. She's not a gun person, but her brothers were hunters. Remember, they would take guns to campus, leave them in their car, and go hunting after school. That was allowed. Not one school shooting. Maybe it's not the guns. Huh? Trey Gowdy, what an absolute dumb money. Such a disappointment. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to get to this yesterday, actually, Robbie. I'm glad you reminded me. There was a lawsuit by Tesla that did not result in a great result. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840 KXNT. Welcome to the What's Right show. Tesla was sued for a deadly autopilot crash. And right before trial, they rejected a $60 million settlement offer from the plaintiff's attorneys. And then at trial, they lost $243 million. By the way, some people don't realize when this happens, there's a statutory offer to settle always at some point in litigation. You don't have to do it, but either side, the defense, in this case Tesla, the plaintiffs represent the decedent's family, can make an offer. Certainly, I know this is here in Nevada and California, the two states that I practice law in. And you put an offer forward, and they have a period of time to accept or reject. If they reject the offer and you get that amount or more in court from the jury, then from the point in time that the offer was rejected, you can get the side that prevails. Okay, if you're the plaintiff and you say I'm demanding $60 million and they say no, and then you get $243 million, then you get all your attorney's fees and costs from that point forward. Whew. Now the same thing is true for the defense. If the plaintiffs had said here's $60 million, and the defense rejects it, and then and then of course they get less. Well, then, no, it's the other way around. So if they actually make an offer, if Tesla were to make an offer of say $5 million, and then at trial you get 4 or 4.9 even, then Tesla would be responsible for. You'd be responsible to Tesla for the attorney's fees. There it goes. Okay. Well, anyway, that's what's going to happen here. So it's not just the $243 million attorney's fees and costs. It is a bad outcome for Tesla. In court, no question about it. All right. You know that meeting that the Democrats had earlier in the week They met in Minneapolis, and they had all sorts of speakers. Now, they got into crime. They got into Trump, of course. This was their summer meeting. And, of course, almost presciently, the media, or the politicians there, and it was fawned over by the media, talked a lot about the trans issue. Now, some of these things I mentioned would come back to haunt the Democrats. This one perhaps might a little bit. Here is the Attorney General of Minneapolis, Keith Ellison, talking about how we're not going to scapegoat our transgender community. And this was, this was just on Monday. This was just on Monday.
Dude 44 times, and we'll sue him 44 more and 44 more after that. And we have sued him for gender affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community.
All right. Talking about fighting the Trump administration and how we're not going to scapegoat our transgender community. Now, I'm listening to this now in the wake of the horrific events this morning, where you have a trans shooter as this confused young man who apparently the parents went along with this and didn't set him straight. And, I think, yeah, maybe, who is to blame? If we're talking about scapegoating, maybe Allison's half right. When parents, teachers, doctors, and anyone else with a position of authority in a child's life fails to course correct them and simply affirms their mental illness, maybe they are to blame. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz at the same meeting on Monday, even at the moment, got some press and some attention with this.
And I will have to tell you, I saw a statistic came out today as Minnesota ranks the highest per capita for being a safe haven for transgender individuals in Minnesota. And can I just say, we can talk about economic growth and feeding children and growing the economy and creating jobs simultaneously with talking about everybody's human rights matters, and we shouldn't be demonizing that.
Did he say demoralizing them? I think it meant demonizing them. Demon. If you look at this trans shooter's manifesto, I think he was suffering with some very major demons. A lot of Satan worship in there, a lot of hatred for religion. But here's the thing, isn't this almost as if when Democrats talk about the sanctuary city, we're a sanctuary city, we can protect our immigrant communities, and at the same time, you have incident after incident of violent acts being perpetrated by illegal immigrants who should not even be in the country to begin with. It fascinates me endlessly, this idea that the Democrats are obsessed with these causes that are so fringe. It used to be, once upon a time, the Democratic Party was focused on issues that mattered for working class people in this country. They used to focus on jobs. They used to focus on security. They used to focus on retirement and social benefits. They emphasized hard work, even patriotism. Now the Democratic Party has devolved into the sop of a political movement that just spends its time talking about the trans and the illegals and the criminals and the homeless, as all of society is quietly but quickly deconstructing. Who is it that brought to our world the idea of social justice, for example? So I like talking about this issue because when it comes to kids in school, yeah, if you're going to be honest about it, the problem starts with the parents. But a lot of people just are born unlucky. They're born with bad parents. Well, they go to school. And the schools, aside from being activists, led by activists, and having teacher activists in there. Aside from that, the schools then don't discipline the kids. The politicians have come along and said, you can't do that. That's not sensitive. Little Johnny has a tough life at home. He was born less privileged. We have to go easy on him. And that one opportunity that the kid had in his life to go to school and be disciplined and to be course corrected, to be taught something, goes away as well. It's all because of the perversity of the Democratic Party. Don't go anywhere. More of the What's Right show up next. It's never exactly what they say something is. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The left always hides their true intentions. This is what you have to know. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is my email. What I mean by this is, right, when the left talks about crime, for example, when they talk about how we ought to be compassionate with criminals, what are they really saying? They are saying that they want crime and blight because they want to create chaos, create fear, create problems, cause a dissolution of social order, which in turn makes them more powerful. Go into any American city right now that has open-air drug markets, that has homeless encampments, that allows the homeless and the criminally insane to defecate on sidewalks, and have a look at how well the businesses are doing in that area. Not great, okay? That's a fact. They're not doing well. Now, every one of those businesses that closes down, every one of those business owners that has to end his or her American dream is another person who is a threat to the Democratic Party, who is a threat to liberal socialism. Eliminated. They're done. That person now has to take a job. That person now has to go on public support. That person now has lost their independence. That person now becomes another prospective vassal of the democratic liberal social order. They become a taker. They become dependent on the government and thus a future Democrat voter. So what is this all about? Because you're seeing today, in the wake of the shooting there in Minneapolis, you're seeing all these talking heads on TV and all these Democratic politicians talk about gun control. It's all they want to talk about. No real issues. At the same time, these are the people who day in and day out say horrible things about Donald Trump and basically put it into many people's minds that Trump is a force of evil that ought to be eliminated. One of the things that really hasn't even been talked about much right now in the media is if you look at the hate that this shooter had for Donald Trump, it's straight out of the mainstream media playbook. It is as if this person took in everything he read in the New York Times, everything he heard or saw on MSNBC, and just regurgitated it. He just threw it out there into his manifesto. Now, if I was a cynical person, which I'm quickly becoming, to be perfectly honest with you, I would almost perceive that these socialistic elites, these democratic powers that be in the country, whether they're in the media or in our government, have ramped people up to be hateful to such an extent that it inclines them to violence. And then when these people engage in acts of violence, they then turn around, the same democratic elites that wound these people up and sent them out there to destruct, they then turn around and go, aha, see, we have to disarm the population for your safety, for everybody's safety, for the kids. We got to take the guns away. It's a pretty perverse plan when you start to think about it. They don't want to take responsibility for any of their policies. Part of today's program is tracing back, on my perspective at least on this, of a guy like this shooter who grew up in a family who had a mom who apparently worked for the school, a nice-looking lady. Maybe the family was religious, but in either event, we know that this person changed his name to a female name when he was 17. It required parental consent. The form, the documents, legal documents for the name change were unearthed, and the parents gave their consent. Which listen, I'm going to tell you right now. If my son is still 17. If Daniel's like came home and said, I'm Susie now. I'm gonna say, okay, well, when are you 18? And you do that. Okay, all right. You do you, buddy. I'm never going to affirm that for him. So the parents playing some kind of role in this. But it's relevant that this matters. Because this kid appeared to have a pretty nice family life. We're going to know certainly a lot more in the coming days. But he got really ramped up for the media. I mean, if we're going to look at causes, why doesn't the media look at itself? Why doesn't the media examine that maybe some of this insanely hateful rhetoric that they're putting out there is winding people up to cause harm? You have a guy who wrote on his weapon, "Kill Trump now." On his AR magazine, on the clip, right, that has the rounds, the bullets in it, "Kill Donald Trump." He wrote, "Israel must fall, burn Israel, and 6 million wasn't enough." That was on his pistol holder. This is your classic liberal who hates Trump, hates Jews, hates success, talks about BlackRock and other evil corporations. Again, I'm not, I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but there's a line in this, right? That he's lost all hope. "I don't want to kneel down for the injustices of this world." There is a lot of responsibility on the media for their coverage, for how they've handled the news, the stories they've told about Trump. Frankly, if we're going to go back and talk about, and this is one of the things, I'm not even getting to it today, but I was yesterday on with John Solomon. I was on Real America's Voice. We had a great conversation about some of the lawsuits that Trump has been facing and what the Democrat strategy has been overall with this. But one thing that John told me when we were waiting to go on air is he mentioned how he was getting ready to reveal, going to press shortly after, that evening, last night, the story that now is making the rounds that Comey and others at the FBI were using their own private email server, much like Hillary Clinton. And you're probably thinking, well, what does that have to do with anything here? These people, Comey, Biden, Brennan, and everybody, got all of the world worked up that Trump was basically an agent of Vladimir Putin. How many Americans have been needlessly radicalized just because a handful of deep state toads wanted to stay in power? How many people have been just mind wiped by some power-hungry politicians? The levels of manipulation by the Democrats and by the media is astonishing. And yet it's, anytime you and I decide to speak the truth about anything, we're accused of stochastic terrorism, right? That's the word. It's stochastic terrorism. You can't criticize trans. You're inviting violence. Your words are inviting violence. Hey, I'm just observing an objective reality over here. Now, I'm not suggesting an actual legal liability for any of this. I'm just saying this is something the media ought to think about. And the same way that parents, when their kids are messed up and doing weird things, never want to look inward and go, oh, maybe some of this behavioral problem is my fault because I haven't been an involved parent. I haven't given my kid attention. I've been self-involved in my life to the extent that I'm ignoring my kids. Okay? That's what we're also seeing with the media. The media, gun control, gun control, gun control. They don't want to admit that this shooter here was very likely radicalized by them. That a lot of his hate, his real hatred for religious people came from the media. And who are the media? Well, by and large, a lot of Democrats. So this is, this is the thing. Now, I want to come back. I want to get into a little bit of the, I'll just play it right now. This was an interesting moment. Right, one of the first things that got reported as this thing was unfolding in the morning. Remember, the shooting started about 8:15 local time. The matter was reported contained by 9:30, so we have an hour and 15 minutes. I understand, right, that not all of that was spent with the shooter active on campus, but a long time elapsed between the first shots fired and containment. And this is something that may get very well forgotten as we get through this, but one of the things that's really hugely important here is that there weren't enough cops to come to the scene. There were not enough police. Listen to this local media report.
Throughout the morning, we've been following a violent night overnight in Minneapolis, so we know already that Minneapolis police were pretty strapped. They responded to at least another deadly shooting in downtown Minneapolis earlier this morning. No indication that any of that is connected to what's going on here, but just gives you an idea of this city's resources and how they've been using those. They also dealt with a shooting involving 7 victims earlier yesterday, another fatal last night around 8 o'clock. So it could be that a lot of this help is being called in just to alleviate some of the busyness, I guess, that you could say that Minneapolis police are under. But clearly a lot of agencies now coming in to help.
Minneapolis, you have to remember this. George Floyd protests. Minneapolis was the ground zero for the defund police movement. It all began there. And now you have a shooter running around killing kids, active shooting, and there's not enough cops to show up because, well, there's multiple shootings going on at the same time. I don't think that's going to get covered tonight on CNN. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I think the crime issue and the tolerance of crime is hugely relevant to the debate surrounding this mass shooting in Minneapolis. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Obviously, having police resources adequate to respond to an event like this is critical for public safety. You'd think, the Democrats are always talking about guns being everywhere, so why would you defund the police? I mentioned this just before the break. Minneapolis is ground zero for the defund police movement. Beginning with the Summer of George protests, this is when Gwen Walz, the first lady of Minnesota, who almost became the second lady of the United States, talked about how she had windows open at the governor's mansion and allowed the air to waft in the smell of burning tires, actually businesses, as they smoldered in the wake of the riots there. And so, beginning in June of 2020, the Minneapolis City Council, when this was all going on, and Gwen Walz was sniffing the fires and the riots going on. Well, they've got a veto-proof majority there, the Democrats do, and they stood with activists and they pledged to end policing as we know it. They pledged to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department. This is the first city in America where elected officials made such a sweeping and lofty promise. They put Minneapolis at the center of the debate on this issue, and council members floated ideas, for example, of replacing MPD with the new Department of Community Safety and Violence Prevention. Now, in the budget, late 2020, the council voted to shift $8 million from the MPD general fund over to alternative public safety programs. Now, let me ask you something. Your kid is in an elementary school. I don't care what your politics are, okay? It doesn't matter. You could disagree with everything I've said here today, but this is a test of common sense. Your son or daughter is at school, and the unthinkable occurs. You get a call from a friend or whoever that there is an active shooting on your child's campus. Who do you want to respond to that scene? Do you want an armed police officer or a social worker? Hey, this is my question, right? To people who are idealists about this, who are actually well-meaning and support this from a place of being well-meaning. In no universe does any common sense person think that a talker in a vest is going to stop a mass shooting, okay? So the fact that this was going on, and there are reports that the department was spread thin and did not have adequate resources to stop the shooting. Maybe there are kids that could be alive right now, or at least unharmed, had there been more police officers on duty able to be there. Jen Psaki, a former spokesperson for the Biden administration, this is the gal who was there before Mop Top. Psaki is not a smart gal. Is her show even still on MSNBC? I know it's tanking. But anyway, she wrote out this tweet: when kids are getting shot in their pews at a Catholic school mass, and your crime plan is to have the National Guard put mulch down around D.C., maybe rethink your strategy. What is Jen Psaki saying here? Is she saying that Trump shouldn't be using the National Guard to beautify D.C., which, by the way, is going on? And I think that's a good thing, because it's back to the broken windows theory. If you make places nice, you get less crime. But it doesn't matter. Is she saying that Trump should have allotted the mulch-laying National Guard members to bring their rifles and come and take over Minneapolis? Is that what she's saying? I think that's how it's coming across, and it's just funny to me because this is supposed to be somebody who's good with words. By the way, Jamie Raskin yesterday, before all this happened, tried to downplay on CNN this this is just a fabulous thing about how crime's always been a part of DC. It's like crime, it's like apple pie. It's nothing. Listen.
And the military is not supposed to be used for ordinary law enforcement purposes. In D.C., he was talking about cleaning up the graffiti and, dealing with the blight of homelessness, which are obviously local, not federal issues. And he's trying to militarize our society, intimidate his political opponents. The whole idea of picking cities based on their partisan leadership is absurd. I mean, there are lots of Republican cities and towns struggling with crime. Everybody is across the country. Always. Crime has always been part of our history.
Crime, it's just normal. It's completely normal. We don't have to live with crime. You know this guy in El Salvador, the president? El Salvador was the murder capital of the world. It was certainly top 10, okay? Top 10 most dangerous places on the planet. And I think that El Salvador City was number one in murders at one point. Bukele comes in, young president, seizes control, immediately goes in and says, we are going to build the Supermax prison, and we're going to throw every bad person, okay, every bad person in the slammer. And now El Salvador, specifically El Salvador City, a hometown to Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, so basically think of El Salvador like Maryland, has become an absolute safe haven. People leave their doors unlocked at night. It's actually become like this. So this is it. You don't have to live with crime, but the Democrats think that it's the way it is. We've always had crime. It's an accepted, baked into the equation thing that has to affect you and your family. And then when a mass shooting, like the horrible event of this morning, happens, all they can talk about are the issues that they can't do anything about. They don't look inward at their rhetoric. They don't look at their parenting. They don't look at the drugs kids are using. They don't look at the lack of activity. They don't look at the lack of parenting of adults who are guiding kids. They don't look at any of their policies. They're defund the police. None of that matters. They will not address that at all. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll have more to talk about, no doubt. Sam at whatsrightshow.com, at What's Right Sam on X. I'll see you tomorrow, folks.